sort of a miracle.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. We have 8 items this morning for the FY20 operating budget and CIP amendments. This is the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee work. And we're going to start with the County Executive item. This is the County Executive Office, and Ms. Arthur has prepared a packet for us. And here she recommends approving as submitted by the county executive. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Andrew Klein to first go over the highlights of this recommendation. And then Ms. Arthur, if you have anything else that you would like to add after that, we can do that and engage in a conversation. Mr. Klein.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Andrew Klein. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. I have with me to my left Tina Benjamin, Special Projects Director in the County Executive's Office. Jerome Fletcher, Assistant CAO, focuses a lot on economic development. Sonetta Newbill basically runs the place. And
That's good to know.
So let's skip everybody else.
Yeah. Just go straight to
much faster.
And Jane McKira from OMB. So I just have some brief comments, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Needless to say, the County Executive's Office is in a period of transition. The FY20 proposed budget reflects some decisions we've made with regard to achieving our priority outcomes. Overall, the 34.5 FTE requested is a reduction of 1 FTE from FY19, but is net of several changes. The changes include 3 new positions approved as part of Bill 3-19E, 2 positions shifted to the community engagement cluster as part of an initiative to offer small business support through the regional service centers, and position abolishments and consolidations based on assessments of personnel needs, as well as the budget targets that we received. The budget proposal also includes a few small investments in promising economic development opportunities. One is $40,000 to study the feasibility of a food incubator with a workforce development component, and $50,000, which is the first of 4 installments that will leverage more than $2 million in state investment and another $3 or so million in University of Maryland investment in a biopharmaceuticals manufacturing training center, which is sponsored by the University of Maryland. We're also excited about our new approach to innovation. We're close to hiring an innovation manager who will lead a lean business process improvement program that engages frontline employees in finding solutions that to better serve customers and do so more efficiently. This function will work closely with county staff to identify opportunities to think anew about how we deliver services. The budget targets some of the base professional services funding on lean training and facilitation. Elsewhere in the budget, we've included $2 million to start an innovation fund, which is a revolving loan fund to invest in projects that promise to improve customer results and also generate budgetary savings and/or new revenue for the county. Finally, we are very focused on integrity, which among other things means enhancing our internal control and audit system. We will achieve this with advanced data analytics to monitor financial transactions, stronger procurement oversight, active risk assessment, regular audits of programs, and the inclusion of financial management measures in department performance agreements. Thanks again for inviting me to discuss the budget with you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Klein. I have just a couple of questions. The Chief Digital Officer that is here on page 2, so this would be a 0.6 position?
Yeah. So Netta, you want to explain the funding for that position?
The Chief Digital Officer will actually be 1.0 FTE. It's the funding is split between the general fund and capital fund. So that's why you see 0.6 for capital fund and 0.4 is coming from
Got it. So it's a split.
It's a split.
Excellent. And then the seed funding to support the creation of a county-based kitchen incubator food hall. So the $40,740, that is to just kind of explore, see the feasibility of this.
Yes.
Is this part of La Comunidad proposal? Is that part of the concept that you're exploring?
Tina can talk about that.
Yes, actually it is. Good morning, Tina Benjamin with the County Exec's Office. So the $40,000 is for feasibility. They will be raising additional money. So the next steps in this, and this is the group like Kunuminad, but they rebranded under the nonprofit name of Montgomery County Food Hall and Market. So the next steps in the project will really be to look at focus groups with both potential restaurateurs and job training applicants, and also the food hall operator. They will also be using this money to help develop the organizational structure. And also just looking at, of course, most importantly, sites and the financing associated with this. So this is simply seed funding at this point in time.
And is the intent, I mean, because of course, this is a proposal that is very well developed, it's quite developed.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'd support the fact that we're putting in seed money to see where it might fit, but is the sense that once this whole entire project is developed, there will be, as you stated, I know in Wheaton there was a site that was being explored, I know in Bethesda there was a site that was being explored. So is the idea that maybe there would be a CIP?
I don't believe so, no. At this point in time, so there are two parts of the project. The front of the house would actually be the food hall with the food stalls. And in their eyes, that would be self-sustaining. What they take in rent would pay their expenses. The back of the house would be the training kitchen. That's going to require some help in terms of, and it could be that other nonprofit providers are coming in and providing the training or support services. So that's the piece that at this point in time they need to develop further and really work with other nonprofits in the community to figure out the best way to make that come together. But at this point in time, they are saying that they anticipate that this would not require a county subsidy
I see.
at this point in time.
Okay, great. Awesome. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you. First off, I really do applaud this, the whole idea of the food hall. I think that it truly is, someone can have a very good living, make a very good living as a chef and or a sous chef, and of course it takes training. And I think this really is a way to go about this. And I know that there's been some nonprofits that have thought about it to try to do it on their own, but it just is it's so many moving parts in order to do it. And this, I think the county does need to be a partner with them, and I applaud that. I also applaud the whole idea for the incubator concept. I mean, we unfortunately got away from it, and we probably shouldn't have. And I think that's the way that if we're gonna encourage businesses to be here, we are encouraging businesses to be here. This is a way to say, come in early. We'll stick with you, and you can grow here, and we're gonna help you along the way. So I applaud all of this. Thank you.
My last question has to do with the shifting the business solutions group to community engagement cluster. I think, we did have a very preliminary conversation when we took up the community partnerships, the regional services center, but it was very general. Can you add a little bit more? I'm sure by now you have a little bit more of a sense of how that would look like and what they will do.
Yeah, our first business center is going to open officially in about a week in Germantown. And so the idea is we want to have people with small business expertise closer to our small businesses and providing training. And a lot of times that training is provided not by the county, but by other organizations that we partner with. We want to be able to help them navigate through whether it's a procurement process, permitting process, and making sure they have all the support we can give them, and again, not having to, being able to meet face to face. And so we will have 4 of these specialists that they'll rotate somewhat so we can have presence in all 5 of our regional service centers. We have a lot of confidence in our regional service center directors. They are in touch with the local business community, and now they'll have a resource, because as you know, those offices have been stripped down to bare bones, and those directors have a lot on their plate. And we think this offers an opportunity for them to really make more of a difference when it comes to local kind of grassroots economic development.
Wonderful. And would they also be taking on the responsibility of the function of what we continue to refer to as community development, meaning if a grocery store leaves, and it leaves such a gap in a particular community, is that part of the function as well, to aggressively try to recruit and facilitate that type of?
Yes, yeah, and Jerome has been leading an effort to develop a small business strategy, so we're in that process, and I just want to assure the council that these business support specialists will not be sitting on islands around the county. They'll be very connected to the county executive's office. They will be part of a larger strategy. So I want to try to alleviate any concern that somehow they won't be close enough to the county executive's office to be able to plow through some of the red tape if that's necessary, or be in touch with the policies that are being developed and the thinking that's going on in Rockville.
Excellent. The only other thing I will add is that I hope that there will be a very close interaction with the Small Business Assistance Program as well as the Microlending Program. They have done extraordinary work in truly, connecting with many of those small businesses that usually are hard to reach, and so that's an amazing asset for this particular model as well.
Yeah, and we're hoping that by having these specialists on the ground, we'll be able to identify opportunities, be more proactive rather than just kind of waiting for small business to come to us because they've run into a bureaucratic snag.
All right, great. I don't see any. Councilmember Katz? Oh, your light is not working for some reason.
It says Katz,
Just
but
go
it's
like
actually
this.
Friedson, yeah.
Friedson.
Yeah, it's always confusing.
That's true.
Yes, it's not the first time that it's been referred that the light isn't fully on up
Yeah,
there.
believe me.
But I appreciate it. I'm glad that the kind of areas that we've touched on are the areas I have some questions on, so I'd just like to ask a few follow-ups. First question, just clarification. Could you explain the capitals? Where in the budget is the .4 portion of the chief digital officer? Is that coming from the cable fund or
The
some other?
public safety system modernization.
So that's the 911,
That is a series of.
CIP.
Yeah, that's a series of projects to improve our public safety systems management. Previously, we had a position charged there, a contractor charged there, who was functioning in a similar capacity as would the digital officer. That contractor has since left, so the digital officer will replace that contractor and be charged to the same fund.
and what fund is that?
That's a public
Public
safety
safety.
systems modernization, PSSM.
Got it. Okay, I'm still learning here, so I appreciate you bearing with me.
Change the name.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as I get the handle of it, I'm sure you'll change the acronym and continue to confuse me or keep me on my toes, depending on where you sit. But so this is .6. The total is a 34.5 FTEs in the department.
Yeah.
Is there a .9? I mean,
What's that?
is there a .9? Or there other partial positions that are funded in other places as well? That's how we get to .5, or?
Well, we have some part-time positions.
We do have part-time positions. That's how you get there.
And those are,
Those are general fund part-time positions.
okay. So, so this is where it equals 34.5?
Yes.
So some people are not .5 part-time, they're .6, they're different
Yes.
percentages?
We do
Okay,
have a-
got it, okay. Works for me. And these positions, I first of all appreciate the county executive sending over a proposed salary scale. I know this has been a back and forth issue with the previous council and previous county executive. It's something that I think we're all, focused on, of, making sure that we, maintain the cost of our workforce, certainly at the highest levels especially. And I know there's been a lot of work long before I got here, and a commitment which I appreciate from the county executive and from you personally when you were here in talking about this. How do these three positions, the Chief Labor Relations Officer, the Chief Equity Officer, and the Chief Digital Officer, fit into the proposed salary schedule? Are these near the midpoints, or, what's the numbers that we're basing these off of?
So, we're recruiting for the chief equity officer and chief digital officer. So don't know what the salaries will be. I think the total compensation for those positions was estimated at $210,000. That includes benefits. We've sent over a name for Chief Labor Relations Officer. I don't think that's public yet. And I will say that I told the council at my confirmation that we were going to try to bring people in to these executive positions below the salary levels of their incumbents. I didn't guarantee that, but so far we're batting 1,000 on that, and we're going to continue to make that effort. And with the salary schedule that we've proposed, it is based on a study that was done a few years ago by Public Financial Management on where we needed to be competitive. The previous scale had been 80% band around a midpoint. We reduced that to 70%. We think it is competitive. It gives us the flexibility to compete for talent. We also know that in some rare cases, we can come to the council and recommend a salary above the maximum on that. We don't expect that would happen very often, but we're comfortable with the schedule that we submitted and hope that we can work together on that.
Appreciate that. I just make one point that one of the challenges is when we're comparing a person leaving, and they could have been in county service for 30 years, and we bring somebody in slightly below where they were at, but if that person then stays for a decade, which we hope they will stay for a long time and lead a department or serve in a core and critical area, then their salary gets way beyond what that is because of our annual cost of living adjustments and other inflationary aspects of the role. And so I would just, we don't have to get into a back and forth, but I would just encourage you to think through that of where did the incumbent, come in, what were their years of service in the county, and what will this mean, not just today, but 10 years from now, because, that to me is a bit of a challenge. And as we're making these, tough decisions about how we have a sustainable budget and how we make tough choices and how we try to do these things, I think starting with the highest paid officials in county government while we want to get the most talented people is a really important place to demonstrate leadership.
Yeah, I would just make a couple points. One is as we consider our salary negotiations, we aren't just thinking about, well, what did the last person get paid? There are a number of other factors that go into that. And also, these department directors don't necessarily get the same cost of living adjustments as the rest of employees. In fact, in a lot of years, they have not received any cost of living adjustment and perhaps a bonus, a one-time bonus. So you're not necessarily going to see the same kind of salary growth in that part of the workforce as in the rest.
Appreciate that. And then I had a chance to sit down with the community group and hear about the proposal. Thanks to the council president for suggesting it and setting it up and really making a point for me to do it, which was really beneficial for me. I think the project is terrific. The one thing that I would say that I said when we had the incubator discussion is I don't really see it as much as an incubator as a workforce development and community development program. I think the incubating could be a positive result of some of the efforts, but really the core of that program, the beauty of it, I think, is the community development, where we're a leader internationally in hospitality, and we really don't have workforce development programs that fully reflect that. We have some great programs at University of Shady Grove with the UMES hospitality program, and but we haven't really expanded that and partnered in a way that we should. And I really see this as an opportunity to do that, but I don't see it really as an incubator. I think that might be, part of it, but a small piece of it. And I think the real benefit is how much the community benefits from having this vibrant reflection of the world, which Montgomery County is, and a workforce development program that actually reflects an area where we are a global leader in it. And so I hope, I know we've had a robust discussion about the incubator program. I have expressed my, significant concerns about pulling money out of that NDA for other programs when we don't have a fully baked plan of, what it's going to be, how much it's going to cost, and where we're going. I look forward to working with you and Ms. Kasiri and Mr. Fletcher on what that looks like. And I know the county executive, is very much focused on making sure we have that robust program. But I would call it a workforce development one. And then just to the point that the council president made, the $40,000 expenditure here, I hope that it is focused on helping to make this program take off and more programmatic than study-based, because I'm just a little bit concerned in the way that it is framed. It seems like we're going to spend a year and $40,000 to figure out a location which has already been worked on for, it seems like, a year or even perhaps longer than what I'm aware of, and then we get to the same point next year and we're going to propose another $40,000 to figure out a space, and we're not going to open the doors to a program anytime soon. So that's a little bit of a concern that I have.
So, understood. They are also in the process of raising another $200,000 from private sector sources to really, again, that's all feasibility money. And they already have their first $25,000 contribution. So they're not just relying on county funding for the feasibility stage.
Sure, and my understanding is a multi-million-dollar effort, and so I think that while this is a nice small support to help get this thing off the ground, I'm hopeful that we have something more specific at some point to be able to discuss what does this look like, how is it going to sustain, what participation is the county going to have versus other partners. I'm hopeful that our the college and USG and other places, along with the private sector and nonprofit sector, will participate. But I look forward to that. And then the last piece I'll say, just related to the NDA for incubators and the community engagement cluster, we had a robust conversation about that last time. My understanding is we're coming back, I guess, later this week on May 2nd to talk about it. I'm wondering if we should hold off on approving the moves of the positions until we fully have that conversation. But I kind of yield to thoughts of staff and certainly my colleagues on what the best way forward is on that. I will reiterate today what I said then, which is until we have a plan of what the incubator looks like, I'm concerned about pulling money out of a priority area and then having to refill the bucket once that plan is fully baked, talking about bringing in a consultant for an undetermined amount of money, indeterminate period of time, not knowing what this program looks like. Since it is such a priority of the county executive, shared by the council, I am a little bit concerned that we pull money out, we create ongoing expenses with personnel, and we figure that out. And then also just understanding what the structure will be of this community engagement, business program, and who those folks report to and how it will work, since I think that wasn't fully understood. But I'm assuming we're going to get to that on May 2nd, and I'm just wondering whether or not this part of the conversation should be held off until then. But I yield to my colleagues on that.
Well, a couple of thoughts. So first, in terms of your point, Councilmember Friedson, about the salaries, I do think that, especially when it comes to, positions like the equity officer, where we still don't have the legislation might call for an actual unit. I do think that it would be important to think through those salary schedules so that we don't get into the same situation as we did with the regional services centers, where you had wonderful directors, but not a lot of people that they were supervising, and so there seems to be kind of a strange balance. Just something to to consider. Thank you also for bringing up some of the aspects of this Comunidad proposal. When I met with the executive in December, after being briefed on this particular project and handed him the proposal, the reason why I was so excited about this possibility is because we have been talking on this council for such a long time about not just workforce development, but this idea of it also serving a function of incubating possible restaurant owners for the future. Yeah. And then this notion of this conversation about who we are and how do we attract not only millennials, but also just folks to, activity centers. And DC, when they launched the whole concept of Union Market, it was I mean, there were some of those very small restaurants that actually started as food trucks. I know the Venezuelan restaurant at Epazon started as a food truck, and they won a contest, and they got a little stall in Union Market, and then now they have a little restaurant on 14th Street. And I feel like, we could learn a lot from what DC does in terms of just being super creative and innovative about some of these activity centers. And of course, in a very nice day, there is no way you can find a seat at Union Market whatsoever. And so even when we were discussing the master plan, White Flint 2, and we talked about Randolph Hills shopping center and the light industrial zoning that we put there, many of us had those conversations about how do we facilitate through zoning even areas where you could have vibrant places like these that check all those boxes. So I'm super excited that this is moving forward, but I would agree that, we need to do whatever we can to facilitate this and not get bogged down in studies and whether they're going to raise this money. If this is something we want and we want to show that we're serious about these innovative approaches, then we should just do whatever we can to facilitate it. So I just want to say that, I immediately said to them as well, go meet with all my colleagues. This just checks all the boxes. So I do appreciate the fact that there's some here, but I'm going to be watching this very closely because I think it does really fit into all of that. In terms of the positions, I think that, I feel that we should go ahead and decide on the budget. I will add that it is true that we have not really received a lot of details, and we are also excited and eager to help, make this a success because, of course, as you know, on a daily basis, we are meeting with small business owners, we're meeting with the community, we are out there, and we're saying, okay, there's going to be a shift, there's going to be a change. So it is important for us to also get details when we're approving these budgets about what exactly will be the construct and the way that these small business centers now are going to operate. Just because, it is important not only for us to make informed decisions, but also to be able to explain this out there. So I would just suggest that we go ahead and, and move forward with the funding, but then also as soon as you can, send us very, specific details so that we can help amplify this work.
And I agree with you.
Great. So anything else, Ms. Arthur? All right, so without objection, I would recommend that we adopt the council staff recommendation of approving as submitted the operating budget for the county executive's office of $6,020,944. Okay, thank you so much. Okay. The second item for today is the FY20 operating budget for the office of the county attorney. And Mr. Drummer is here. Let's see, Mr. Hanson, our county attorney, is here as well. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So we see here that for FY20, the county executive is recommending a total budget of $6,377,401, and this is an increase of $187,876, or 304% from the FY19 approved budget. The council staff is recommending adding $600,000 to the reconciliation list to fund a disparity study in FY20. And of course, I have thoughts about that, but I'm going to have Mr. Drummer, if there are any other highlights, and then we'll turn to you, Mr. Hanson, for any other issues that you may want to raise.
Good morning. The budget that's presented to you is a same services budget. There's a slight increase. It's the same number of employees, 76 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. The FTEs went down, but that's only because they found a couple of different places where they could increase the chargebacks to other departments, namely the Revenue Authority and the Police Department, I believe. There's some internal shifting from the Public Interest Representation Program is moving into the Finance and Procurement Program, but that's internal only and doesn't actually make a difference in the budget. The issue of the disparity study is simply the county code created the minority-owned business program and required the county executive to provide a report on the need to continue the program. It currently says that the report is due this July 1 of 2019. They're not going to make that because there was no funding for the disparity study last year. They can't do it without a disparity study. The executive sent over legislation to amend that law to allow the sunset to go another 2 years from 2021, which is one way to handle it, to simply amend the law and postpone it out. The other way is to actually fund the disparity study. If you fund the disparity study, you'll still be a year late, probably, because it would need to have been funded in the FY19 budget to be done on time. Because it does take a while to do a solicitation and then actually do the study. So the estimate is $600,000 for the disparity study. We're recommending you put that on the reconciliation list and see if there's money for it when we get done.
A list that is now $18.6 million.
You know, this would make
Mr. Hanson, anything you would like to add?
On that sober note, good morning. Mark Hanson, County Attorney. I'd like to introduce a couple of my key staff folks. Carolyn Kilgariff, who's the Office Manager. Ida Sue, who is the head of our IT information technology effort. And I've said this ever since I've known Ida, the County Attorney's Office does not function when our computers don't work, and we can't look cases up in Westlaw, and she keeps us moving. Otherwise, we are stuck. And then the OMB analyst, Naeem Mia. I don't really have any prepared remarks. It is virtually the same services budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I mean, I would say, regarding the disparity, study, I know that when it was completed, there were a lot of things in there that were not big surprises, and, we're still looking at how we address many of these issues. I think that it is going to be difficult in this, particular year with all of the priorities that are on the rec list to even think that this is going to come off. And I think that, the executive really should be incorporating this into his budget request. So either the executive, sends, I think, a supplemental or a budget amendment, or, we will entertain changing the date since we're already late. But I think it would be really important for next year's budget for this to be included. And Mr. Drummer, maybe you can nudge remind us so that we can send the executive a memo when they're preparing their budget to please to ask that that they address this. I just don't really see realistically this coming off the list, but if my colleagues, obviously that's just my thought. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. How long does the study actually take once it's funded?
It generally takes about 9 months once it's funded. We have traditionally gone out for a request for proposal. It takes a number of months doing the study. The vendors usually say, oh, we can do it in 6 months. It's been my experience having gone through about 4 or 5 of these. It's not that easy. And then you have the process of, once you get the study back, you have to digest it and decide, consider what it means and how that may reshape our program and to what extent it would reshape our program, and then involves some briefing not only the county exec but the county council. So it is a 9+ month process on the best of days.
I as much as I think we do need the study, and we should have the study, I agree with you that it's not realistic that $600,000 is going to be able to be funded off of their list this year. So I think what we should do is not put it on the rec list, but send a note from the committee to the county executive and say, this is the time frame you need. You should try to find this money and send us a supplemental. And so that's where I am.
Thank you. All right, don't see any other lights? Okay, so with that objection, we will adopt the council staff recommendation of approving the Office of the County Attorney's budget of $6,377,401. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and just let me say, thank the GO committee for your historic support of OCA. It means a whole lot to me and the whole office.
You do
Thank you.
outstanding work, and we say that every
Give
single
you a
year.
thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. Great team. Thank you
Thanks,
so
sir.
much.
Thanks for all your help.
All right, for item number 3, we have the operating budget request for the Inspector General. For that, we have Mr. Smith, and I don't know if it's Mr. Blansted. Yeah, Mr. Blansted is here. Somebody for OMB. I think on my list I have, let's see.
Naeem, yeah.
Yeah, Naeem, yeah, as well. Come on over. And let's see, Mr. Smith has prepared a packet where he says to approve the recommendation of $1,238,522 for the Inspector General budget. So let me, Mr. Smith, anything else that you have to add, and then we can engage with Mr. Blansett.
No, not a lot. I guess the most important items, as noted in the packet, is that the funding maintains the number of FTEs required by the work plan as submitted by the Inspector General. Staff believes that's important, obviously, so that the work can get done. The packet also notes several of the changes in the budget. Most of these are just alignments based on actual expenditures and for personnel costs, for skill and expertise needed, especially for the Deputy Inspector General. However, as we already know, we're going through the process of looking for a new Inspector General based on Mr. Blancett's notice for retirement. So there may be some savings throughout the year based on that, so staff doesn't have any issues with that. And then the last item is, as always, the county code requires that the council put in the budget resolution the next 3 years of an operating budget of a recommendation. This isn't a requirement. The council can change it. It just has to note why it changes it. But it's required by county code, and so every year we put in the amount that the council approves for this budget for the next 3 years.
Great, and also, this committee, well, actually, the audit committee has also been in conversations and is prepared to move forward. Councilmember Friedson has led the charge of some changes in our audit functions and looking at the Inspector General's office as such, so I'm sure he'll talk about that, but that's another thing that we're going to be addressing very soon. Let's see, Mr. Blansett, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think there's really not a lot for me to add. I do appreciate the opportunity to serve in this position, and I think as you are aware, this is a same services budget. We do have a couple of vacant positions, but we do have plans in place to use contractors for a period of time to follow up on recommendations that we have made to the county executive's office to review their progress on implementing recommendations. So there is flexibility going forward, but there are plans to make progress on the work that's been done.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
They should take the names off.
So thank you for that. I just want to thank Mr. Blansett, you for your service and for your support of us as we have taken a look at our oversight functions, not just of the Office of the Inspector General itself, but of the broader oversight functions of the county and of the council. Your help in working through that has been really helpful to us, and I appreciate the work of my colleagues as the audit committee and the GO committee, depending on what day we are. I guess that's like the county council and the district council or the health council. I really do appreciate it, and I think we are taking some significant steps in the right direction. Look forward to introducing legislation on May 7th as an audit committee, and appreciate everybody's work on this effort, which as I've said before, I see as a core function of the legislative branch in the county, and taking us to the next level, or catching up to, frankly, where we are in terms of the size of our government, the type of services we provide, and the sophistication of what county government does today, as opposed to where we've been, and a recognition of where we expect to go. So thank you to everybody for that.
All right, well, Mr. Blansett, you have served us very well. I think the county really is very fortunate to have had you leading the charge in this office. You have also, I think, strengthened this office significantly. And I know that whoever, succeeds you, it's going to find, that particular office and some of the processes and some of the areas have been very well served. And I think for that, it is very important to express our appreciation for you and your team. You've run a very lean operation, but you have really produced some outstanding reports and done some incredible investigations for us as well. So thank you so much for all that you have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, without objection, then we have a recommendation for the Inspector General's FY20 operating budget of $1,238,522. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next item number 4, is the FY20 operating budget for the Office of Management and Budget. And Mr. DeFazio has prepared a packet for us, and we have Director of OMB, Mr. Rich Medalino, here as well. This is a recommendation of approving $5,235,537, which is 6.4% over FY19 approved budget. The recommendation is to approve it as submitted. Let's see, Mr. Medalino, anything you'd like to highlight for us in terms of your budget?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank Amy Wilson for all of her contributions to the county government. Amy has been with the county for more than 20 years? 30 years. More than 30 years. She came right from elementary school in an internship program into county government, and she retired on April 1st.
Oh, wow.
We really thought it was a joke that she was trying to play on all of us, but unfortunately,
The joke was on me.
she,
I'm here.
but she has come back to help us through this process. So thank you, Amy, for your many contributions to the county government and to OMB. This has been an interesting year. I think we are down to 2 managers in OMB. So when you think about the budget and the transition and everything we've been able to accomplish, I think we've done it in a very lean way, with only Mary Beck and Jenny Bryant as our returning management staff. So I think you will see many new leaders in OMB over the next year as we deal with you. We've been able to roll out the Balancing Act online tool to try to solicit public input into the budget. And then, of course, moving forward, we're going to be trying to introduce outcome-based budgeting to the county, a 2-year budget cycle on the operating budget, at the same time as, of course, we move into the formal 2-year cycle for the capital budget, and a 10-year financial plan to help guide all of you and the county executive in trying to make decisions about where we are moving forward with where our county is moving over the next decade in all of our plans and policies.
Excellent, and I do see a lot of this very well spelled out on page 3. I assume that the efforts to transition from 1-year public services program operating budget to 2-year budget would be of great interest, and I'm sure that it would require legislation, I assume, correct? Yeah?
Well,
Is that,
interestingly, and I wish Mr. Hanson was still here for part of this conversation, even the CIP The CIP is still an annual budget that you appropriate. We've come to a series of agreements, and there are policies and resolutions in place that sort of guide it, so that but you would still be making an annual appropriation to the budget. Just you would be looking at, and we've investigated some other jurisdictions around the country that do this, local governments that do it, and often what they talk about is the annual budget, the appropriation, and then the next year is called the endorsed budget. So in essence, you are endorsing a concept moving forward. Our current thinking, because it seems like it would be a lot to just go to a 2-year budget, is try to pick a few agencies that are aligned in outcomes and try them first as a first step, and then move to the rest of the enterprise the following cycle.
Got it.
I think we need to spend some time, and I think certainly the council president knows this intimately from her time on the school board. We have to think about what a 2-year appropriation would look like for maintenance of effort, and you make an assumption around enrollment, and if that assumption is too high, have we locked ourselves in to an appropriation? So there are some legal issues to work through that are unique to us as an organization and to the state of Maryland's laws.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting point that you just made, because it really is about the structure of how you look at and you perceive or execute the appropriations, the budget, et cetera. But I do agree that having an opportunity to be able to truly analyze and to be able to deliberate on the outcomes of many of the things that we do is so critical. I think a lot of our constituents don't understand, that this race of constantly working on a fiscal year cycle becomes a real challenge when it comes to implementation and evaluation of outcomes. So I do think that, thinking in this way would be a major benefit.
If you are looking for something to do in free time from
Yeah.
a reading standpoint,
Sure.
interestingly, both 2 state of Washington examples, both King County and then the city of Seattle, have some very interesting models that we've been looking at to see how they proceed, since Washington jurisdictions, state of Washington jurisdictions have been doing this for several years. And some have adopted, some haven't, some have adopted and then gone back, some have adopted, gone back, and then readopted. So it's been interesting to see how Washington governments have handled this approach.
I have this habit of, when I visited Seattle last year, because now my daughter is going to be moving there after she graduates, of spending some time in the King County Executive Building, talking to folks, of course, about the equity policy most specifically, but I think that they have such extraordinary, innovative approaches to so many aspects of government. And I always say, it's great to be able to learn from some of these jurisdictions that are doing great work, instead of us always thinking we have to reinvent the wheel on everything. So I think they're awesome. And their staff is just so generous with their information. So I'm so glad that you're looking at them as well. I may follow your advice when I go visit, over there soon.
The one thing that is dramatically different between King County and Montgomery County is they don't have a school system.
Yeah.
They don't fund their school. I mean, they have a school.
They have a school,
They don't
yeah.
They don't fund a school system like we do. I have heard rumors there are schools in the state of Washington, but they are not funded through their county governments.
Headline on that one would look real good.
What happened to that? Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you for that. I have some questions about this. Some of my questions I think you've answered. My understanding is requires a charter amendment to truly change to a formal 2-year budget, but this would be kind of a stylistic, 2-year budget where we would not formally be adopting the out year. We would be putting it down as basically an initial placeholder, which then could be adjusted from, but would create a far easier starting off point to any of those adjustments like school enrollment and other things. Is that kind of what
If
you're
I'm
talking
understanding
about?
your question, yes.
Okay.
Because it's the same discipline that we show in the capital budget. You, and an executive, you all could
We're not approving 6
rework the
years of
capital
spending.
budget in the second year. But you traditionally don't do that. You try to do the on-year, off-year, and it would be trying to do that same discipline in the operating budget cycle.
Right, and I think that makes a little bit more sense to me. I mean, I was a little bit concerned about that, since obviously the council plays the primary role in the budget process, and, you know, significant changes to that obviously would require us to be at the forefront of it. So my understanding is there's a $100,000 expense here related to this conversion. Could you just explain specifically what that is going to? Is that, you know, is there a technological aspect? Are we hiring a consultant? You know, what are we spending the money on? Where is it going? Why is it needed?
We are looking at both, and I'm looking at Amy to make sure that I'm not wrong, but we are looking at both the technology side of things as well as continuing to work with our financial consultant, PFM. I think Amy wants to jump in with the correct answer.
We appreciate that.
That was the correct answer, but in the bigger picture, there's $100,000 in finances budget for the consultant for the 10-year fiscal plan. There's $100,000 in OMB's budget for an IT consultant to help us modify all of our IT systems as we move to this 2-year budgeting process.
And that, so the technological upgrades are going to guide what the recommendation is on how this is going to work to the council? I guess my question is a chicken or an egg situation, right? Should we be talking through, I mean, since obviously how the budget works is primarily a council function. It's recommended by the executive, but it's primarily a council function. We approve the budget. Is this putting the cart before the horse? Are we hiring the technological consultant to figure out what is possible, what is not possible within the current charter, or are we setting in motion a plan that then will be baked before we kind of learn what this plan is going to look like? Because I share the council president's view. I actually think there's some significant benefits, particularly to oversight and to outcomes-based budgeting that, you know, that has been a priority of this administration, which I appreciate. And I see the benefits. I just am not quite sure what it is, what it's going to look like. I'm not sure, you know, the plan has been, you know, fully baked, which is okay. I totally get that, but I'm just a little bit confused about changing the technological platforms, unless we're just analyzing what the technological platforms are and figuring out what their capabilities would be and how we would adjust them. And that's what this money is required for.
Our budget systems are developed and maintained in-house. You may have heard people refer to BASIS, which is the system OMB, the departments, and some of the agencies use to develop the budget. If we go to a 2-year budget development process, all of our systems will need to be tweaked in order to accommodate that second year in the development during phase 1. So the $100,000 is primarily for an IT specialist to work with our existing IT team to help us make sure that we have our systems in place to implement whatever the decision is made as far as going forward with the 2-year plan. You know, if we move forward with implementing this for the next budget cycle, we have to be up and running by October. That's when the departments will start using the system. And with our limited IT staff, we would need to bring somebody else in to help us get to that point in time.
So this isn't to, if I understood your question correctly, Councilmember Friedson, this is more about doing the actual changing and modifying the program, and not designing out a new system, but making the modifications to the system that we have in order to provide it the same sort of, have it be able to provide you, the executive, the agency staff, the tools they need in order to be able to actually use the system in a 2-year concept as opposed to a 1-year concept.
Okay, I appreciate it. I think we need to have a more robust conversation that directly involves the council of how we move forward on a 2-year budget, and if we move forward on a 2-year budget, because I think ultimately we would have to approve it, and if this is money that is required for you to come up with a plan in order to demonstrate what it's going to look like, or
This isn't that. This is the money to help
because I think
change the system to reflect whatever plan we all come up with. This isn't guiding the plan. This is responding to whatever we need, technological changes need to happen once we decide how we're going to move forward.
right. I guess my point is the council hasn't decided whether or not we're going to move forward on a 2-year budget cycle or what that would look like and what that would require. My sense is there'd be a lot more expenses than just these tweaks, and before we move forward, we should have that discussion. At least that would be my thought process and my preference, that I think we are slightly putting the cart before the horse here. The idea of having the technological changes in place, coming back here across the street, having these discussions of what the 2-year budget cycle looks like, having that implemented before October, I just have trouble seeing that is going to be a likely scenario. And I think, appropriating the money before we've made that decision seems premature to me. But I appreciate the reason why you're interested in doing it and want to move forward, and I do understand that it is a priority of the county executive and the CAO in order to do the outcomes-based budgeting that they would both like to do.
Yes, Member Katz.
Thank you very much. And I do believe we're going to have the robust conversation, and we always do. But I do think your approach, or the suggested approach that you were talking about, is probably a very good one, to not have it as a necessarily quote-unquote charter amendment, but to actually look at it on a 2-year time frame. One, the first year, that you'd actually be voting on it. The second one, you'd actually be thinking about it, because I think that gives us an additional look at what we're doing. I mean, even for the 1-year time frame, our projections have not been the greatest for revenue, and there's a lot of factors that's the reason for, but it certainly has been that way. And this would give us that additional discussion about the budget. One of my great concerns about the budget process for the county is that it's so much at the same time. And you really can't get your arms around, I mean, you all have the same difficulty, I'm sure. You really can't get your arms around every part of it. And we go to the committee work, through the committee work, and we do a good job with that, but it's so big. I mean, it's $5.7 billion. So this would give us that additional look, this would give us that additional discussion, and I do think that you're going to have changes for the second year, but because of that, perhaps we can get our projections better, and because of that, maybe we can actually have a better system in place. I do think we need the conversation, but I do think that part of the conversation is how we can do this, or if we do this, how it would be the most effective year-round. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
I don't know how much with what the CAO has explained about the approach to the outcome leadership teams, the turn the curve teams, and there are the 21 different outcomes and the teams that are being put together on each one of them, and trying to align resources from a variety of, at least from an accounting standpoint, from a variety of the departments that feed into those outcomes, and then trying to provide you, the public, other stakeholders with the idea of, this is what we're getting in return, this is what we're spending, here's how, and this is what's happening with that money, and using that to inform us moving forward how you invest or choose to not invest money in those sorts of outcomes any longer, because they're not, to use the term, they're not turning the curve, they're not producing any results for us, or at least results
Yeah.
that we feel are worthwhile.
So we haven't had that briefing yet. It's definitely something that we need to schedule. I'll be honest, I mean, I think, at least from my perspective as president, I am doing everything possible to facilitate, what the executive has indicated that he needs in terms of the appointments and in terms of, some of these issues. But the council, I think, has been really patient because we have not received a lot of very, I think, specific and important details. But it is understandable because, of course, it is a transition. I think that once, we do settle this budget, then we do need to, engage in that very important conversation, because if not, then every budget cycle, will become a very difficult process if we're not on the same page, at least in understanding what are some of the, what's some of the analyses and what have been some of the determinations vis-a-vis outcomes and things of that nature. We're obviously going to probably disagree on some things, but we do need to have, that very robust conversation before we get to the budget. So that's kind of like another message to, the CAO and everybody over there that, we understand that it's been, it's not an easy transition when you're trying to get everything in order. But right after budget, we do need to do that, because if not, I don't think my colleagues and myself are going to feel comfortable approving some of these major changes unless we have the benefit of the background and the rationale and all the analyses that's behind it.
Yep.
Okay, Friedson, yes.
Yeah, thank you to the council president for her leadership in that regard, and I think there is some, definitely a lot of interest on the floor to get a more complete picture of what the plan is. I think we've gotten bits and pieces of it at a time, but not a whole lot of details and not a whole lot of connection of how these things fit together and what the overarching plan is, and if that communication can improve as things settle down and the government gets fully staffed and the budget season gets finished and you bring on some more managers that can help you and others in county government do their job. I would appreciate it. I respectfully, and I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I don't have support of my colleagues, but I'd like to vote no on the 100,000, but yes on the rest of the budget.
Right, so with that objection, we will accept the recommendation with the exception of a 2-to-1 for, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, for that particular item.
And I very much look forward to working with you, with this committee, with the entire council, as we develop this new approach, because I think there are exciting things. I think it'll be positive for the community. I think it will be bumpy. I think we will make mistakes, but it will hopefully result in a better budget moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Madaleno. All right, our item number 5 is the Office of Procurement. So we see Mr. Shetty is here, Pam Jones, Grace Deno, Marsha Watkins, Jane Kira. And Ms. Price is here to walk us through the packet. And before we get started, I just want to take a point of personal privilege to be on record. Ms. Price, I think in one of the last items, we were talking about the council office renovation, and I referred to Mr. Orland as somebody that could give us a briefing, and I totally, in the craziness of the budget, totally missed the fact that you are the one who has been shepherding us through. But I was so extraordinarily proud to see you lean in and make sure that we remember that you are the one who's been leading this charge. And so respectfully, I apologize, and I look forward to that briefing, because you always do an extraordinary job in keeping us straight. So with that, I do see that the council is recommending approval of the executive FY20 recommended operating budget for Office of Procurement, and that is $4,480,897. Ms. Price, if you can tell us some of the highlights, and then we'll turn it over to the Director of Procurement, Mr. Shetty.
Just mainly, there are two things that I want to point out for the committee. In procurement's budget, the position for the manager 1 position that was tied to Bill 319 has formally been abolished within that position. Council staff is approving with that. That was one of the positions that had been identified for savings, and it's reflected here. The only other item that I would like to point out for the committee just relates to a part-time procurement specialist position. This position was added in FY16, tied to the fiscal impact of Bill 1414. There There were a slew of bills that had been passed during that period, which had a number of fiscal impacts, and this position was going to sort of be able to take care of all of the legislative impacts affecting procurement. The position has been vacant since it was added in the budget. It's lapsed this year, it was lapsed last year, and I understand that we do have new leadership in the Office of Procurement, so he may be able to share some information on how their staff has been absorbing the work and just what the plans are for the future for this position.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Shetty, this is your first budget here in front of us. We're very happy to have you on board. These positions, it is kind of funny actually, because I remember when we were passing all of these bills, the administration kept coming over and saying, we don't have the capacity to implement this stuff. And so we're like, well, here's a position, and release a half of one. And it's interesting that it was not filled. So it will be important, I think, for us to know how that is going to be addressed under your leadership, since you now have the opportunity to change things around. So yeah, if you could also address those particular points, that would be great. Mr. Shetty.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm Ash Shetty, Director of the Office of Procurement. I wanted to quickly introduce my very large entourage. Starting on the far left, we've got Marsha Watkins-Thomas, who is my Management and Budget Specialist. Pam Jones, whose name probably appears on this budget more often than mine because she was acting director when it was submitted. She is the division chief for operations. Grace Deno, who is the division chief for business relations and compliance. And finally, on the far right-hand side, Jane Mukira, who is from the Office of Management and Budget.
Yeah, welcome.
So, as far as the first question that you asked, the part-time specialist 2 position is one that we have always made up for not being able to fill. Again, this precedes my time, by passing those responsibilities off onto the remaining procurement specialists. I guess if I had to speak plainly, that was an expediter, or is an expediter position, which essentially means that people would be able to get through things faster when that position is filled. When that position is not filled, obviously sometimes there might be remember, this is 0.6 or fraction of a person helping a team of about 12. So the overall inefficiency, for lack of a better word, may not be noticeable. That said, there is probably some inefficiency in our ability to execute when that position remains unfilled. That said, one of the reasons I feel like I wanted to be in this position was to be able to identify opportunities for us to lean out our processes. I want us to be able to find efficiencies in how we do things. And to that end, we will be able to survive simply because we will work smarter instead of working harder.
Great. Right. Any other areas?
Those are the only 2 items.
Okay. Councilmember Friedson. I don't know which one to get first, but
He's using my name.
His light blinks and it has Katz as the name, so I have to literally be like Katz Friedson.
Yeah. Playing the part of Sidney
Which one
Katz.
is it?
She
Yes.
she knows Mr. Katz. She has served with Mr. Katz, and I, sir, am no Sidney Katz. So and I'm willing to admit it.
You, sir, are very lucky.
Yeah. Well, I have a hard enough time filling my own shoes. Certainly couldn't fill his. Thank you, first of all, for being here. And as I've said before, I think procurement is at the heart of government and what we do, how we procure goods and services, at the trust that the public has, and the fact that we're getting the best possible deal for the least amount of hard-earned taxpayer dollars, the most efficient processes for the business community to feel like they're getting a fair shake in being able to compete for contracts, of which we are expending a lot of money to provide those goods and services, and for the men and women who work in county government to feel like, as a use agency, they have a partner to help them go through what can be a difficult process, and in the interest of accountability and transparency, sometimes can be an extremely laborious one. So I really do appreciate that. I'm excited to have you, Mr. Shetty, on board, and to have you leading this this team and to see this team really move forward. And you came in, you had the most fully thought out plan of what you hoped to do of anybody that I have met with, including returning directors. It was extremely impressive. And I guess the first question is, this wasn't your budget. This was submitted by Ms. Jones essentially. And I just wanted to see if you felt like you had within this budget the resources and the what you need to fulfill the vision that you have set forth and shared with me and the rest of my colleagues.
Thank you for that question. Immediately, yes. But I expect to over time, and in all honesty, thank you for acknowledging that proposal, my function vision document. There was a little bit of naivety in it from not knowing certain things in terms of what's going on the ground. So that's caused me to revise some of those plans, having now been in seat for, actually tomorrow will be exactly 1 month. So I guess I'm here to stay.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
But that said, as time passes, I think that I will actually be making changes that will affect the question you asked me. But for the immediate future, in terms of what needs to happen, yes, we're okay.
I appreciate that, and I speak from experience. After 5 months, it doesn't feel that much different than after 1 month, but exciting nonetheless. So just want to bring up, we keep using the word abolished for the M1 position. I think, I've made the point before, I'll make it again, this is not an abolished position. This is a transfer of a position, and a very expensive transfer of a position, and so I just think that we need to, be careful with our language, because this was shared with us that it would be an abolished position. And in fact, I had some skepticism that the position would be abolished since it was encumbered by an employee, and it is not being abolished, it is being transferred over, and we are basically paying more for a position that is, outside of its maximum of its grade in another department. And so I just think that needs to be acknowledged. And then my understanding is that was a position that was specifically dealing with small minority-owned businesses and those programs, the local small business program, the women-owned, minority-owned, and disability-owned small business program. And so I wanted to just find out how that was being filled, because we just had a discussion about something related to this program, but it's something that I think all of us, as was mentioned earlier, really support this program. I actually think it could be significantly improved. I think that there is a need there, and the question is eliminating a position that's directly focused on that. How's the department filling that role?
So,
or those functions, I should say.
Terrific question. Thank you for asking it. I will, after I'm done sharing my thoughts, let Grace add anything that's appropriate, because this is directly related to her division. But as far as that specific position, as I understand it, it's been moved to the Business Solutions Group. There's still somebody who we're going to be partnering with, so to some extent we'd still have access to that expertise, for lack of a better word. But in terms of how we're handling it, we've got predominantly this position was responsible for outreach, for engaging that community, for the local small community. We've got somebody who is currently at a different level, but performing similar activities in terms of outreach. In addition to that, frankly, a big part of my position should also be doing similar outreach, because that outreach is very important. And in the early meetings that I've held with outside entities, that is predominantly the cohort, the constituency that I am meeting with. So to be honest with you, a big part of that responsibility is going to go directly on my own shoulders, because I think that's where it belongs, and it speaks to the importance of it, as you all acknowledged even during my interview process. So as far as the last thing that you touched on, you hinted on, which obviously didn't affect our department's budget, but the OCA's budget, the disparity study. I'm hoping to, in the weeks to come, to meet with each of you individually to talk about that extension of the sunset that is going to be done. And as part of those conversations, I'd love to share with you some of my thoughts and ideas on what else we could be doing in that whole space, to be honest. Grace?
Yes, Grace Deno, Business Relations and Compliance. To add on to what Mr. Shetty just said, also we are proposing to promote the or to reclassify the current MFD Minority Program Specialist 2 position to a Programs Manager 1 position. With that reclassification, that position will be able to do some of the tasks and functions that the current M1 position is doing.
So there's even more costs associated with the transfer of this position. So we haven't abolished it, because I just want to be clear, we have the person, the incumbent, still in the position in another department that still costs taxpayer dollars, and we are promoting, and which has a financial cost as well. And so we're not, this was premised under the basis of abolishing positions for net savings, and actually is causing a net financial impact. Just a comment there, which I think speaks to some of the challenge. So related to this, the note that Ms. Price made about the labor peace agreement position, I have no issue with that. The position itself and the reason for the position, I guess my only question is, this particular area, do we think that the Office of Procurement is the best place for that function? Because it's business compliance. Is business compliance, which is not necessarily directly procurement. I see the tangential relationship to it, but do we think that is part of the core competency of this department? Is this in the right place in county government? Is this the most appropriate place for that person or that function to serve?
I think that we are the natural gatekeeper for it, in terms of where this can be monitored from, and where this can, just given that there's many different using departments that would actually have it otherwise be part of what they need to keep an eye on. It makes sense for it to be overseen by a compliance function, so that is separate from the using departments, and also by a group that serves as a gatekeeper. In other words, we have that one point of contact before a contract is signed, and then when the contracts are monitored. So yes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, given that, I feel like that might have been the end of days situation here. That's all the questions I have. Thank you for that. I take your word for it. It doesn't seem like a totally natural, but as you kind of explain it from a compliance function, I can see the point, and I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, and I'll try to be quick and brief as we are worrying about what that just happened. First off, thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to you being here and for all of your assistance during the time that Ash wasn't here and before that. During these listening tours, and I know, Ash, you've been in at least one, maybe both. I don't remember whether you were at both of them. But during these listening tours about for business, the main one of the main topics, candidly, is procurement. And we've had people say that they've had to fill out forms that were large numbers of pages, and somebody said, "Well, I'll take yours because mine was even larger," yada, yada, yada. And so we have a lot of things that I know you've heard and that we need to be doing to make people feel more comfortable in how they do business with the county, and that's a very important part of the government itself, or the business climate as such. So I know that you're up for the task, and I know that we need to do it, but I think it needs to be pointed out, we need to do it fairly quickly. I mean, we've got to change what we're doing, and if we're doing it that's not the most efficient, let's change it, and when we are doing things efficient, let's remind people we're doing it that way. So I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shetty, so thank you so much, and I really do also appreciate Ms. Jones and Ms. Deno for everything they have done to kind of keep things going, and the rest of the team as well. This is a very exciting area, as you've heard time and time and time again. We don't need to repeat it again and again and again. This is an area that everybody is so interested in, and I have no doubt that you are the person to lead us into the next level in rethinking and reimagining how to best achieve those outcomes. And so I am very excited about this particular realign, redesign procurement department, and we will have a lot of conversations in this committee about it, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So with that, I think without objection, we will approve the budget of $4,480,897. All right? All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so item number 6 is the FY20 operating budget request for the Office of Legislative Oversight.
The entourage is making its way.
It is, wow, it's just a lot of folks coming over. Okay, Mr. Seelar, so I see that the executive has recommended a budget of $1,886,783, and I want to express also just my appreciation for the very high quality of the reports that your team continues to provide. I think it really serves us very well. I also appreciate the fact that some of members of your team have been providing support in other areas, such as this operating budget process. And I think that there is just so much extraordinary capacity in your team that, as we've spoken before, I hope that we will continue to be able to tap into that kind of expertise. We have an extraordinary team of analysts, no doubt, and they do amazing work. Your team also has, I think, a lot of really important specialized expertise that we can tap into, and I appreciate fully the fact that you have also been so flexible and allowing for members of your team to also provide that kind of support to our personal council office staff as well as council members. So I do appreciate that. I think as we have these conversations with the executive branch, given that this is a new administration, sort of a new council, when we talk about innovative approaches, when we talk about realignment, it shouldn't just be at the county executive's side. We on the county council need to also look at how we best leverage and how we best position our resources in order to provide the most effective service to our constituents. So I really do appreciate everything that you do. Let me turn it over to you for any remarks you want to make about this proposal, and I do have at least one line on.
I guess the first thing I would say is the same service budget. Just to explain the increase in cost, we've had a lapsed position, which does not make any sense given our office. We have not had a turnover in my office for 5 years. We had challenges when we were asked for cost savings. I did put in for a RIF, which was not accepted across the street. If they're not going to take those types of changes, that's why we've got rid of the lapse in our office. So that's just the difference there. The one thing I do want to say, I want to respond to what you said about us being more involved in kind of general operations of the council. And I think that when the work plan comes in July, I'm going to work on that and build off of, I think, what we're doing, not only with the budget, but with the council president this year with the racial equity, Dr. Erling Bonner-Thompson working significantly on that. I think in general, working on larger themes of the council is something that we probably have the expertise to take over. Listening to the conversation before about OMB, I generally think that we probably have the capacity to work with them on the 2-year budget cycle. So I would suggest is you start thinking about that, think about assigning that type of work to us so we can go and maybe participate in some of their conversations and discussions.
Wonderful.
So I would say that that's another area where we could, I think, provide significant value.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Councilor Friedson.
Thank you, and I just wanted to share my appreciation. I haven't been here for very long, but the short time I have been here, you've been a tremendous resource, the full team, and especially you as a director, particularly on some of the oversight work that we've been doing and on some legislation, including the economic impact legislation that we're about to introduce, and your advice and your thoughts and your help in really understanding the county and really understanding the needs and being a productive partner has really been helpful to me, and so I really do truly appreciate that. And I think as just to note, there are some of the work plan functions that I think could be absorbed into having, full-time economic help in the department, which is part of that legislation. So I think there's a real opportunity to strengthen, build on success and strengthen what you're doing, and to really beef up our economic impact to make sure that as we talk about the fiscal impact, of what it means to county government, that we're also talking about the broader economic impact of what it means to our residents, our small businesses, and what's the broader issue there. And I know you've done some work on that, but this will provide you with greater tools in general and specifically on every piece of legislation that we do, which I really appreciated. And I am disappointed that the county executive didn't accept your suggestion of your savings plan without getting into what the reasons were for it. I think we have shown, thanks to the council president, who has really pushed for a level of deference to the county executive to set up his government how he sees fit within, with appropriate oversight. And I would hope that moving forward, he would show that same level of deference to you as an independent agency to allow you to run your office in the way you think is most appropriate, particularly not asking for more money, but saying this is the most efficient way to give up the money that we have that doesn't hurt core functions of the office and allows us to continue with our core mission. So I just wanted to say that I will continue to encourage that. I hope that we all can encourage that, and I share your, I don't know if you said disappointment, but I have disappointment in what you had said, that your suggestion of the best way to run your department without asking for more resources wasn't accepted. And I hope that moving forward we can make sure that that happens.
I mean, just to clarify that was a cost when they asked for the cost savings. So that was a cost savings. We were going to meet their cost saving piece. And so, well, I don't necessarily think that the position is not valuable. I do think that making the cost savings in that area was something that we could have done and contributed and not had substantial disruption to our office. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Vice President Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do just want to say what a great job your entire team does. It really is amazing. Candidly, you call balls and strikes, and sometimes that becomes very difficult. You look at it in a way, a business-like way, that lets us know what's the outcomes could be, and all the information that is necessary to figure that out. So I applaud you, and I certainly support what you're doing, and you've helped us out quite a bit, and we need a whole lot more help. So thank you.
Okay, well, I guess with that, I think without objection, we will approve your budget of $1,886,783. Mr. Seelar, thank you, and express our appreciation to your team.
And Mr. DeFazio is here to talk about the NDA for
Okay, Mr. DeFazio.
It's essentially going to be same services last year. There's just a small personnel increase, so of $4,990.
Yes, indeed. All right, without objection, we will accept that. Thank you. Okay, and so items 7 and 8, they're the council office and legislative branch communications outreach NDA. And for that, we have Ms. Marlene Michelson. I believe Ms. Sonia Healy is here as well, and Mr. Orland, if you want to come up. And I want to note that the recommended FY20 budget for the council office, it is $12,461,441. Before we get into the conversation, I want to also, I think, on behalf of my colleagues, express deep appreciation for the high quality of support and extraordinary knowledge and analysis that our staff provides to us. And it's not an easy task. Nothing here is scheduled, in terms of being predictable. Things are scheduled, but the predictability is usually out the window on a daily basis or on an hourly basis. And it requires, I think, a high level of professionalism, but also, I think, understanding of who we are in Montgomery County in 2019. I oftentimes, when somebody asks about, my work, I describe how interesting it must have been before my time when we didn't have internet, and perhaps a very, interested or active constituent might take the time to write a letter, take it to the post office, mail such a letter. It would be received here, would be sorted out, Somebody would draft a letter response, it would be mailed, and then that constituent would receive that. And I assume maybe it would take, I don't know, a week maybe 10 days, something like that. Well, the reality is that right now is just seconds that it takes a well-informed constituent to write us an email. And the expectation is that we should respond immediately, and it's not 9 to 5, it is 24/7. And that is just the reality of how the world is in 2019. And in a county of 1 million residents, I believe I was thinking about how in Montgomery County Public Schools, they talk about that they have students from more than 164 countries and they have 184 languages spoken. The complexity of this county is really extraordinary. So my hat's off to all of you for your work. And I have been one of those people that has constantly said, we've got to strengthen our capacity to do our work. And, you know, when we talk about the communications, legislative branch communications outreach, NDA, it's very important for people to understand that this is not just about, you know, putting nice little infographics or having, you know, nice little videos. Everything we do is based on our communications. We have got to be able to communicate with constituents. I think we've been at the forefront of televising, you know, all of our committee sessions, our work sessions. This is super important because given the state of media, if we don't do everything possible to communicate what we do, then it sort of feeds into this notion of, you know, local government doing things behind closed doors. Well, we are out here all the time, and that requires technology, investment in technology. It requires investment in staff that can quickly produce these types of packages and communicate very, you know, effectively. And it requires language capacity and cultural competency. That is just not an easy thing to do. So hats off, and I am, you know, I was very, very adamant about, you know, asking the executive to respect the request that we were making to strengthen some of our capacity. We are right now operating in a very lean environment, so it is important for us to be able to do our work and for our own office staff to have also the support of all of you so that they don't run around and jump off cliffs or stuff like that, especially during budget. So that's just a long way of saying thank you, and I do have to say I really do appreciate the executive for including the request that we have put in here for some additional dollars to strengthen our capacity for technology and communication, et cetera. So with that, Ms. Marlene Michelson, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'll start with the council office budget first, but I do want to thank the council president for sort of setting the context here of how the nature of our work has really changed dramatically, primarily in the communications area, which is why you'll see some increases there. For the council office budget, even though there's an increase, I actually view this as pretty much a same service budget. Last year, we did not have all of the council member offices fully staffed. This budget reflects having each of those offices fully staffed. During an election year, we have a little bit of flexibility. Some staff from departing council members left early. Some incoming council members take a while to hire. Last year, also due to budget constraints, we significantly reduced professional services, very much limiting the council's ability to hire contractors. From what I've heard from this council, there are a lot of interest and opportunities that may need those resources. So in the council office budget, you see an increase that kind of restores some of the capacity that we lost and brings us back up there, and does not actually increase staffing other than in council members' office to reflect returning to fully staffed office. In the communications NDA, it's a slightly different perspective. We felt like given the demands we have for social media, for outreach, for dealing with a much more diverse population, that we really did need additional resources, and you will see an increase in funding in the NDA. Some of it you had approved as part of a supplemental earlier in the year. In addition to continuing those resources, there's an additional $200,000, and attached to the packet is a proposal prepared by Sonia Healy that identifies some of the specific ways that we think it would be very helpful to bolster the council's communications efforts at this time. We will, of course, continue to evaluate that because this is an ever-changing area, so I can't tell you that this is the last change we'll be recommending, but we think it's a good series of changes for this moment in time.
Thank you. Mr. Orland, Ms. Healy, anything you want to add?
I just want to thank the council president and their committee for their ongoing support and what we're doing with the communications office, because as you mentioned, you all are doing very complicated work and we need the resources to be able to explain that across all types of communities in our county. So I really want to thank you, and hopefully the proposal on Circle 5 can start to address some of those things.
That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much again, everyone. Everybody looks very sort of fresh, even though we're in the middle of the craziness of the budget, et cetera, and all other issues. So I appreciate you. Appreciate you very much. It is Monday, that's true. All right, so with that, without objection, we will approve $12 million, $461,441 for our operating budget council office and legislative branch communications outreach NDA. Okay, so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.